3 months. 3 months to advance from the advanced stage of the heavenly immortal realm to the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm. Such a speed of cultivation could simply be described as world-shocking. As direct descendants of great clans and existences that were ranked in the top 10 of the continental Ascension rankings, Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong had seen all sort of geniuses, yet compared to Chen Shi, all geniuses seemed to be cast into a shade no matter how outstanding they were. This fellow really is a freak. Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong sighed endlessly with emotion in their hearts. But right after that, both of them were stunned. Wait, from the advanced stage to the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm? If memory serves, then Chen Shi was merely at the intermediate stage of the heavenly immortal realm when he fought Yuan in the martial emperor domain. Brother Chen, may I ask how long it took for you to advance in your cultivation last time? Luo Zifeng couldn't refrain himself from asking. He was truly shocked, and even if he faintly guessed the time Chen Shi took to advance from the intermediate stage to the advanced stage, he didn't dare say for sure. Is there any need to ask? It was naturally a month. Before Chen Shi could answer, Liang Bing had answered casually. There was indeed no need to ask because everyone knew that Chen Shi was at the intermediate stage of the heavenly immortal realm 4 months ago, and now that he'd entered into closed-door cultivation for 3 months and charged into the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm, then he was surely at the advanced stage of the heavenly immortal realm 3 months ago. This was something that was very easy to calculate. Hiss! But when they heard this answer, Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong still couldn't refrain from gasping while their entire bodies froze. My God! Where did this freak come from? For a time, both of their gazes towards Chen Shi had become strange, and they were truly unable to find a word to describe their current feelings. Chen Shi couldn't help but glance at Liang Bing, causing the latter to grin before she said via voice transmission, "Could it be that I was wrong?" Chen Shi felt helpless. It was naturally correct, yet telling them so directly caused him to seem extremely unusual. He didn't want to be always seen as a freak. All right, I just wanted to see their reactions, Liang Bing explained in a low and gentle voice, and then she bit her sexy and plump lips as she spoke, causing her to seem extremely pitiable. The heart-shocking and soul-moving allure that came from an icy cold, proud, and imposing beauty like Liang Bing when revealing such an appearance was something that could even melt steel. Chen Shi naturally wouldn't be angry, and even if he was angry, it would have vanished completely when he laid eyes on such an appearance from Liang Bing. In the next moment, he changed the topic and expressed his intentions. What? You want to challenge Liang Bing? When they found out that Chen Shi had actually come here for the sake of sparring with Liang Bing, in order to verify his current strength, Luo Zifeng had already exclaimed with surprise before Liang Bing could speak. The nearby Gu Yutong had a strange expression as well. Chen Shi was stunned. Could it be that I can't? Liang Bing stood there with her arms crossed before her chest, and she grinned while maintaining silence. Luo Zifeng seemed to have a lingering fear in his heart instead as he warned once more. Are you sure? Chen Shi felt that these fellows seemed to be too warm and strange today. They seemed to be even more worried than me about sparring with Liang Bing. Ha! Chen Shi, Liang Bing has already ascended to the 5th position on the continental Ascension rankings, and brother Luo lost miserable at her hands. That's why he couldn't help but warn you, Gu Yutong explained, and he glanced at Luo Zifeng with pleasure in his eyes that came from Luo Zifeng's misfortune. Chen Shi came to a sudden understanding. It turned out that this fellow had been bashed up terribly by Liang Bing. No wonder he's giving so much thought to this matter. Luo Zifeng was instantly embarrassed from having his past exposed, and he glared fiercely at Gu Yutong before he said with an ill expression, Brother Yutong, why don't we have a spar as well? Gu Yutong shook his head. Thinking of venting your anger on me? If you have the ability, then why don't you go look for my big brother? Your brother, all you know is to mention your brother. Can you even survive without your brother? Luo Zifeng grunted and didn't conceal his ridicule at all. Gu Yutong's older brother was naturally Gu Yueming, a peak expert that stood at the 2nd position on the continental Ascension rankings. When facing such an existence, Luo Zifeng naturally didn't have the courage to challenge him. Liang Bing's beautiful brows knit together when she saw these two fellows quarreling with each other, and she asked Chen Shi directly, Do you really want to spar with me? Xianxia shrugged and sighed in a joking manner. For the sake of the rankings, I have no other choice. You don't need me to hold back slightly? No. Why don't I refrain from utilizing the Silverlight shuttle? Please don't. Then, alas, I just want to fight to my heart's content. All of you seem to be rather worried that I'll lose. Could it be that I'm so weak? When he saw Liang Bing seeming hesitant, Xianxia shook his head with a feeling of speechlessness. Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong glanced at each other before they finally realized that Xianxia was serious. All right, then quickly notify me if you're unable to hold on in the battle. Don't injure. Liang Bing still couldn't refrain herself from reminding him. Xianxia instantly became slightly annoyed because even though her words were filled with good intentions, being looked down on like this by a woman was something that no man could endure. In the next moment, he swung his hand and said resolutely, I remember that you live to subdue your opponents, right? Come, fight with me this time and see who subdues who. Subdue. This word caused Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong to be stunned before they revealed a wisp of a dubious expression. So it turns out that this kid has that in mind. Xianxia didn't notice these details. He just very simply remembered that when he met Liang Bing for the first time, his senior sister Liang had once said that Liang Bing was a proud woman that liked to use strength to subdue everything. So, if he wanted Liang Bing to be sincerely convinced of his strength, then he naturally had to suppress her by force. How could he have imagined that such a simple sentence would cause Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong to misunderstand his intentions? Yes, it wasn't just the two of them, there was also Liang Bing. She was similarly stunned when she heard what Xianxia said, and then her heart jerked. She recalled the scene when she met Xianxia for the first time as well, and Liang had once tried her best to make Xianxia subdue her and bring her home. When she thought up to here, Liang Bing's entire body felt uncomfortable while her beautiful face felt hot. She spat in her heart. I never expected that this fellow was still thinking about this matter. He really concealed it well. In the end, Xianxia fought Liang Bing. However, it wasn't at the martial practice grounds, nor was anyone allowed to watch. As for the process, it won't be described. In the end, when they both made an appearance once more, it was already at noon the next day, and they both seemed to be in a slightly sorry state. Xianxi's hair hung loosely, and his clothes were tattered while he gasped for breath. He used a hand to support his waist while the muscles on his face twitched frequently, and he seemed to be enduring violent pain. On the other hand, Liang Bing's appearance was rather terrible. Her jet black and beautiful hair was disheveled. Her clothes were wrinkled, and the shoulder, waist, and thigh areas of her clothes were already damaged, causing them to reveal expanse after expanse of jade white and dazzling smooth skin. Her beautiful face flushed red like the sunset while her clear eyes flowed with light, and she was embarrassed and slightly frustrated. It seemed as if she'd suffered some sort of blow, causing her to seem slightly preoccupied. Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong hadn't left, and they actually saw such a scene after waiting bitterly for a day, causing them to instantly feel slightly dazed and muddled. Who exactly won? Both of them glanced at Xianxia. They looked at the muscles on his face that twitched without end, and they couldn't help but feel slightly amused in their hearts. Wishfully thinking of subduing Liang Bing, now you've suffered, right? After that, both of them glanced at Liang Bing. As they looked at her damaged clothes, her snow-white skin that was faintly visibly, and her beautiful face that was flushed red, they couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva in secret while they were almost unable to move their gazes away. Needless to say, Liang Bing's current appearance was truly too alluring. She was usually like a high and mighty queen that was proud and icy cold. When had she ever had disheveled hair, wrinkled clothes, and a trace of embarrassment within clear eyes that carried frustration? She was extremely alluring, and she caused others to wish for nothing more than to embrace her and protect her in their arms. Have both of you seen enough? An icy cold voice resounded, and it jolted Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong awake. After that, they welcomed Liang Bing's murderous and piercingly cold gaze, and they instantly felt extremely horrified and embarrassed. Who won? Luo Zifeng hurriedly changed the topic. Liang Bing paid no attention to him instead. and she just glanced at Xianxia with a complicated expression before she said, "Why don't we head to the floating wall of light to determine your ranking right now?" Xianxia nodded, then shook his head. "Let's clean up first. It's truly too easy to cause many misunderstandings by going out like this." As he spoke, he looked at Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong, and he was obviously talking about them. "All right, then wait a moment and we'll go together." Liang Bing nodded as well. As they spoke, both of them returned to their rooms and left Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong behind. Both of them looked at each other and were both slightly stunned, and they were still unable to figure out exactly who had won. Gu Yutong was unable to figure it out no matter how he racked his head, and he sighed in the end. "There's no need to continue guessing. We'll find out when we follow them to the floating wall of light later." Luo Zifeng deeply agreed. On a bustling street in 4 Divinity City, Xianxia's group of 4 headed towards the floating wall of light at the center of the city, and it caused an uproar in the surroundings. The reason was very simple. Even though this group was only made up of 4 people, all of them were extremely dazzling figures in 4 Divinity City, and even if it was in the entire Southbridge continent, they possessed brilliant reputations. So it was impossible for them to not be known. For example, Luo Zifeng, Gu Yutong, and Liang Bing weren't just figures ranked in the top 10 of the continental Ascension rankings. They themselves were heirs to their clans, so the authority they possessed could be said to be monstrous. Besides them, even though Xianxia's background wasn't as formidable as theirs, yet he possessed a considerable reputation as well, and he was one of the figures that were the hottest topic of discussion in Southbridge continent. Moreover, since he defeated Wanchuan, Xianxia hadn't shown himself in public any longer. Everyone was guessing where he'd gone. Yet now that he'd actually appeared once more before the eyes of everyone, it naturally drew the attention of many. Most importantly, he was walking with the heirs of the Liang, Gu, and Luo clan, so who could maintain their composure after witnessing such a scene? Xianxia's group of 4 was indifferent towards all of this, and they walked directly towards the floating wall of light. They were utterly unaware that when they just passed a corner in the street, a pair of gloomy eyes gradually withdrew from them before its owner turned around and vanished. Before the floating wall of light. At this moment, there were still many people standing before it, yet it wasn't really bustling. Even though the rankings on the wall changed every single day, yet it was still those names at the position of the first 100. However, along with the arrival of Xianxia's group, the scene instantly started bustling. The reason was very simple: their group was truly too conspicuous as it moved along the street, and it caused numerous people to follow along. Strange. Why have the 4 of them come to the floating wall of light today? Could it be that they intend to determine their rankings? It can't be. Just not too long ago, the Liang clan's eldest young miss defeated Luo Zifeng and jumped up the rankings to the 5th position, whereas young Master Gu Yutong just fought Wang Yudao, who was ranked at the 6th position, so it's impossible that he came to check his rankings. Then it wouldn't be Xianxia, right? It must be. Only he has vanished lately. Now it would seem like Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong are obviously accompanying him over. My God! Xianxia is really granted great prestige. I even thought his days were numbered when he offended Yin Miao Miao that day, yet never had I imagined that he would actually made an appearance again now. Moreover, he would even be accompanied by the heirs of 3 great clans. If the members of the Yin clan saw this scene, I wonder how they would feel. The crowd discussed animatedly while their gazes descended onto Xianxia in unison, and their gazes were filled with curiosity, surprise, envy, and so on and so forth. Xianxia remained indifferent towards all of this, and he just briefly sized up the rankings on the floating wall of light before he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. 179th position? He clearly remembered that he'd defeated the 154th ranked Wanchuan in the Martial Emperor domain that day. Logically speaking, even if he hadn't entered the Martial Emperor domain lately and didn't test himself before the floating wall of light, his rankings wouldn't have fallen by 24 positions, right? In next to no time, Xianxia came to an understanding. Since his rankings could improve, the rankings of others naturally could improve as well. There were billions of living beings in the Southbridge continent, and this obviously showed how fierce the competition was to be ranked on the continental Ascension rankings. Coupled with his cultivation and seclusion within the Liang clan, his closed-door cultivation to charge into a higher stage of cultivation, and his sparring with the experts in the Liang clan's younger generation lately, he hadn't tested himself before the floating wall of light. So in this way, his rankings would naturally lower. As he thought like this, Xianxia instantly came to an understanding. He walked forward and began the testing, separating a strand of his immortal sense and silently pouring it into the wall of light. When they saw this scene, everyone in the surroundings instantly confirmed that it was really Xianxia who'd come to determine his rankings. For a time, they couldn't help but be extremely curious. He hasn't made an appearance for only 4 months, so how much can Xianxia's rankings improve this time? Hey, how many rankings do you think Xianxia can improve on the Continental Ascension rankings this time? He'll at least be able to charge into the first 150 positions, right? After all, only 4 months have passed since he defeated Inauthentic, so even if his combat strength improved, it wouldn't be much stronger. Idiot! Could it be that you haven't discerned that Xianxia has already attained the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm? Let me ask you, can anyone possibly improve their cultivation twice in succession within 4 months? The perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm. My God! How shocking! Amazing! That day, he defeated Inauthentic while at the intermediate stage of the heavenly immortal realm. Now that he has attained the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm, his combat strength had probably undergone a tremendous change. Exactly. In this way, he'll absolutely be able to charge into the top 100, and it might even be possible for him to be ranked in the top 50. Why do I feel that he'll be able to be ranked in the top 30? The top 30? How could that be possible? Wouldn't he be too heaven-defying if that were to happen? It would probably be impossible to find anyone like him in the entire Southbridge continent. As they listened to the whispered discussions in the surroundings, Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong revealed a wisp of pity. The top 30? These ignorant fellows really dare to speak rashly. If they know of Xianxia's current combat strength, they'll surely be shocked dumb. Of course, they wouldn't explain to these fellows. Firstly, it was because they couldn't be bothered to waste their breaths. Secondly, it was because of their intentions to see the crowd's dumbstruck appearance when they saw Xianxia's rankings. The 3 of them felt pleased in their hearts and were even slightly impatient for this. In next to no time, Xianxia's name on the floating wall of light transformed into a wisp of golden light that started rising swiftly. Every time it flashed, it would surmount over 10 names, and it caused the surrounding crowd to be dumbstruck. Isn't this speed too fast? Everyone was astounded and almost didn't dare believe their eyes. At this moment, the expressions of even Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong became serious while they held their breaths in concentration. They stared fixedly at the wisp of golden light while a rare wisp of anxiousness arose in their hearts. They seemed to be filled with anticipation and excitement, and it was a feeling that was impossible to describe. He's in the top 100, but only a few breaths of time have passed. Someone exclaimed with shock and astonishment. Shut up! Don't you fucking see that it's still rising? Stop making a fuss over nothing! The nearby people expressed a wave of displeasure as they felt this fellow had spoilt the mood. At this moment, it ought to be silent, anxious, and filled with anticipation as they waited silently for a miracle to appear. Right? The atmosphere in the area around the floating wall of light had indeed become deathly silent, perfectly silent. The sounds of laughter, the sounds from the moving streams of wagons and people in the distance caused this area to seem even more quiet. The gold light flickered as it rose steadily like a bamboo shoot that rose after the rain. The top 50, the top 40, the top 30. Every single rise would cause the hearts of the crowd to tremble, and their breathing became more and more rapid. Later on, they even forgot to breathe. All of them opened their eyes wide with stunned expressions while their entire bodies were on the verge of being drowned by irresistible waves of shock. During this entire process, a wisp of surprise and admiration gradually crept up onto Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong's faces. Imagining was one thing, but seeing it with their own eyes was another. Especially when it was amidst this solemn and silent atmosphere, It allowed them to deeply experience that unparalleled shock created in one's heart from the changes in the rankings on the Continental Ascension rankings. This was the meaning of the rankings that came from the heaven Tao of the immortal dimension, and it was the fairest. Rising in the ranks of the rankings was a type of extraordinary glory to any expert. It was the strongest form of acknowledgement. Honor, glory, influence, status, identity. Weren't all of these what every single expert yearned to obtain? My God, he's in the top 20. Finally, someone was unable to restrain the shock in his heart and exclaimed with shock. But at this moment, no one paid attention to this, and all of them stared fixedly at the rankings while their fists silently clenched together. They actually seemed to be even more anxious and excited than Xianxia himself. Before long, the golden light had charged to the 15th position. This ranking had already forced the 16th-ranked Lin Xiaoqi down a position. Moreover, this wasn't the end. During the next period of time, the golden light that represented Xianxia continued to rise, yet its speed had slowed down greatly. Infeng'er that was ranked at the 11th, the 10th-ranked Xue Lianting, the 9th-ranked Xian Wenlong. As they watched the names of numerous great figures in the younger generation of Southbridge continent being replaced by that wisp of golden light before being left far behind, the visual impact they suffered caused all of them to transform into statues. They stood stunned on the spot with speechless expressions. Alas! I've been surpassed. When he saw his ranking, the 7th position, was surpassed by Xianxia, Gu Yutong gasped while he looked at the tall figure by his side with a shocked and complicated expression. In the end, he puckered his lips. This is a freak. I'm unable to compare to him, and I can't as well. At the same time, Luo Zifeng's unwilling mutter sounded out by his ears. This fellow. He actually didn't know how to describe his feelings. When he saw this, Gu Yutong finally felt much more comfortable. Obviously, he felt extremely fortunate to have Luo Zifeng suffer by his side. Otherwise, it would be too shameful if it was only him, but right after that, no matter if it was Gu Yutong or Luo Zifeng, both of them didn't dare think about anything else because at this moment, Xianxia's ranking was surprisingly charging towards the 5th position. The name at that position was precisely Liang Bing. Both of them didn't know the outcome of the battle between Liang Bing and Xianxia from before, so this scene that was occurring before their eyes would undoubtedly be able to give them a satisfying answer. At this moment, time seemed to have slowed down. The gazes of everyone converged onto the wisp of golden light as they watched it gradually charge to the 5th position from the 6th, and their hearts seemed to have tightened into a ball from their extreme anxiousness and excitement. Swish! The gold light flickered before finally stopping at the 5th position, and then the golden light retracted to reveal Xianxia's name. On the other hand, Liang Bing's name had been pushed down to the 6th position. Everyone was stunned silent for a long time when they saw this scene, and then they suddenly erupted into an uproar that shook the heavens. The surging waves of voices even caused the layer of clouds in the sky to be shattered. Perhaps the shock in their hearts had been suppressed for too long, and it finally erupted completely at this moment. Everyone's faces were covered in shock and disbelief. Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong were naturally no exception. They were shocked to the point their lips trembled and were unable to speak properly. Amongst the people present, besides Xianxia, only Liang Bing seemed to be the calmest because early on during the battle with Xianxia, she was clearly aware that Xianxia would surely possess this ranking, and it would be weird if he didn't. At this moment, Xianxia was completely unaware of everything in the surroundings because he was scanning a completely new ranking in his mind, and it was the Ascension Immortal rankings that covered the entire immortal dimension. Numerous unfamiliar continents and names appeared on the Ascension Immortal rankings, and they were reflected within Xianxia's mind. In next to no time, he found his name, Xianxia, 5th on the Southbridge continent's Continental Ascension rankings, 999th on the Ascension Immortal rankings. Finally, I've ascended into the top 1,000 of the Ascension Immortal rankings. When he saw this scene, Xianxia's strained nerves finally relaxed completely. He felt like an enormous mountain that was pressing on his heart had finally been shifted, and his entire body felt indescribably relaxed. However, right at the instant his mind relaxed, a strand of extreme danger suddenly surged into his heart, while the bone-piercing coldness caused goosebumps to arise all over his body. The area before the floating wall of light was bustling and clamorous, and it formed a surging ocean of voices. Everyone's gazes were fixed upon the fifth position as they exclaimed with shock, and they didn't notice at all that Xianxia's expression had become heavy and icy cold. Similarly, no one had noticed that middle-aged man in yellow silk clothes, an ordinary appearance, seemed too fat to move, and was like a merchant that carried the stench of money had appeared before Xianxia. The middle-aged man's hands were held within his sleeves as he smiled while standing before Xianxia. His bearing was ordinary and didn't emanate any imposing aura at all, and he caused others to be unable to detect any cultivation from him. However, Xianxia was clearly aware that there was absolutely no such person before him earlier, and when the strand of extreme danger arose in his heart, this man had suddenly appeared before him. It seemed as if he'd teleported. It was even to the extent that he didn't draw the attention of the others in the surroundings. Only a golden immortal was capable of accomplishing this, and only a golden immortal could move freely and teleport under the laws of the immortal dimension. He comes with ill intent. Xianxia was able to clearly notice that even though the middle-aged man was smiling, there wasn't a trace of a smile in his eyes. It was icy cold, calm, and it was extraordinarily cold and emotionless. Who's this person? Xianxia didn't have the time to consider this question because the nerves in his entire body had strained as if he was a fully drawn bow, and the four oceans within the black hole world in his body circulated and boiled while his essence, spirit, and energy suddenly surged into its peak state. But his mind was still calm as ice. He was able to clearly sense that everyone in the surroundings, including Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong, who were nearest to him, actually seemed to have not noticed that something was off. It was even to the extent that the changes in his vital energy seemed to have been isolated by a shapeless force, so it didn't draw any attention. In other words, he seemed to be within a crowd, yet was actually isolated and helpless. This caused Xianxia's heart to sink. He knew that this was surely caused by this middle-aged man, and how could this middle-aged man who was able to accomplish this so easily be an ordinary figure? Took long to describe, yet occurred in an instant. These thoughts actually flashed in Xianxia's mind within an instant, and it had only been a breath of time since the middle-aged man appeared before him. A breath of time seemed to be extremely short, yet in the eyes of true experts, it was sufficient to kill their enemies no less than 100 times. The facts proved that the middle-aged man had indeed come for Xianxia, because as soon as he made an appearance, he'd launched an attack. His right hand held within his sleeve suddenly stretched out and formed a fist before he exerted force with his arm, causing an extremely simple punch to smash down at Xianxia's head. As soon as he made a move, his imposing aura instantly changed. His obese figure became frightening and ferocious, while his ordinary face was filled with a dignified expression that horrified the soul, and he just seemed to be like a peerlessly sharp blade sealed within a chest that was unsheathed. This was absolutely an expert with extraordinary experience. Since the moment he appeared, he didn't utter a single word, nor did he give Xianxia the chance to speak before executing such a punch that was simply and violent as it smashed down directly at Xianxia. Obviously, he didn't intend to give Xianxia any chance to survive. This was a true assassin. Before he made a move, he was ordinary to the point others wouldn't notice his existence at all. Yet once he did make a move, it would surely be a strike swift like a bolt of lightning. This sudden punch was indeed swift like a bolt of lightning. Even though it was soundless, yet it vividly displayed the imposing aura of lightning. It seemed as if it had passed through the ages and the void and carried an oppressive force that was impossible to avoid. At this instant, Xianxia's eyes narrowed as he truly sensed the aura of being on the verge of death. But he was prepared a long time ago, and he was prepared to utilize techniques such as the Godslaughter Burst or to utilize his clone to resist the strike for him. But in the end, he didn't do anything. Because at the instant the middle-aged man attacked, numerous arms suddenly appeared from all directions. One was thin like a bamboo and held into the form of a claw as it locked onto the middle-aged man's throat. One was slender, white, broad, and powerful, and it formed the shape of a blade as it slashed down towards the middle-aged man's left rib. One was covered in bulging veins and coiled with a layer of a metallic sheen, and it transformed into a fist that was ferocious like a sledgehammer as it smashed towards the middle-aged man's chest. The numerous arms represented numerous formidable existences, and the might they emanated wasn't inferior to the middle-aged man's punch at all, and were even slightly superior. The scene was too ruthless. It was like a group of spiders were surrounding and capturing a bug that was trying to escape the spider web. At this moment, Xianxia felt the scene before his eyes was covered in an expanse of blazing light, and he wasn't able to see anything clearly because their imposing aura was too terrifying while he was merely a foot away. Under such a close distance, he was affected by it as well. Bang! An explosion that shook the heavens and the earth resounded by his ears, and then a furious shrill cry sounded out. After that, an expanse of clamorous noise that was mixed with chaotic, fleeing footsteps arose in the surroundings. Even though he was unable to see everything clearly, yet Xianxia was still able to imagine through the sounds he heard that the middle-aged man who came to assassinate him would surely be doomed beneath this attack. On the other hand, everyone else in the surroundings of the floating wall of light were jolted awake from their shocked states and fell into chaos. Xianxia's strained nerves and boiling vital energy returned to calm in the end. All of this had occurred too quickly, unimaginably quick, yet it felt to him like he'd experienced an extremely long cycle of life and death, and only he was aware how it felt. When his vision recovered, Xianxia finally saw everything clearly. The area before the entire floating wall of light was empty, and there was only an icy cold corpse lying on the ground before him. It was that middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had an astounded expression and seemed that even until the moment before his death, he hadn't figured out how this assassination could possibly fail. "Xianxia, are you all right?" Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong walked over with concerned expressions. Two figures stood behind each of them. There were men and women, young and old, and all of them were existences at the golden immortal realm that possessed obscure and shocking auras. Obviously, these golden immortals were experts from the Liang, Gu, and Luo clans. This allowed Xianxia to instantly understand that it was precisely these golden immortals who lent a hand earlier and annihilated that middle-aged man in one go. Xianxia shook his head and glanced at Liang Bing, Gu Yutong, Luo Zifeng, and all the golden immortals. In the end, he didn't say anything and just looked at the corpse on the ground and said, "That's a member of the Yin clan?" "Yes. He's called Yin Tianhu, an elder of the Yin clan at the golden immortal realm," Liang Bing explained. "A golden immortal? The Yin clan really thinks highly of me?" Xianxia muttered with a calm expression, and it caused others to be unable to figure out exactly what he was thinking. "Heh! I knew the Yin clan wouldn't let the matter rest. I never expected that we'd catch such a large fish as soon as we made an appearance." Luo Zifeng laughed coldly without end. "We won't let this matter rest either. Humph! If it wasn't for us accompanying Xianxia over this time, the Yin clan would probably have really succeeded," said Gu Yutong in an extremely icy cold voice. "There are too many people here. Let's talk after we return." Liang Bing swept the surroundings with her gaze before immediately leading everyone back to the Liang Bing. On the other hand, Yin Tianhu's corpse was swept up and put away by a golden immortal realm expert of the Liang clan. After they returned to the Liang clan, Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong left hastily. Obviously, they intended to return to their clans and report the matter to their fathers. "All of you guessed this would happen?" When he was alone with Liang Bing, Xianxia was finally unable to refrain from asking this question. "No, we were just clearly aware that the Yin clan would absolutely not let you off so easily. So we deployed some experts in secret to escort us when we left the clan," Liang Bing explained in a casual manner. Xianxia came to an understanding. "You don't have to continue worrying about this. This action of the Yin clan is equivalent to giving us an excuse. In the past, it wasn't convenient for us to stand out and go against the Yin clan, but it's different now. They actually dared to conduct an assassination on the streets, and it has already touched our bottom line." Liang Bing's expression was calm as she said indifferently, "After this, you don't have to show your face. Our Liang, Gu, and Luo clans will naturally pressure the Yin clan. The Yin clan must pay 100-fold for the incident this time, She was naturally very well awake that he was utterly unable to do anything to the Yin clan by himself, and only by relying on the strength of the Liang, Luo, and Gu clans could give a heavy blow of the highest degree to the Yin clan. "Thank you," said Shi in a serious tone. Liang Bing smiled and said abruptly, "Right. What's your ranking on the Ascension Immortal rankings?" It was too chaotic at that time, so I didn't have the chance to look for it. She couldn't help but smile when this was mentioned. The 999th, a ranking away from being unable to be ranked in the top 1,000. I can be considered to be lucky. Liang Bing was stunned instead. "So in this way, you can head to Valiant Star Continent right now?" "Yes, that's what I plan to do. Presently, only 3 months remain from the recruitment date of the Tao Emperor Academy. Whereas, I have to pass through over 100 continents to arrive at Valiant Star Continent from Southbridge Continent. In this way, I have to start my journey in advance." She nodded and didn't notice at all that Liang Bing's mood seemed to have become downcast. "Then when do you intend to leave?" asked Liang Bing. "If it's possible, then I intend to leave tomorrow," said Shi after pondering deeply. Liang Bing went silent for a long time before she raised her head, and she stared at Shi with her clear eyes as she said with a smile, "Then I'll congratulate your success and smooth entry into Tao Emperor Academy beforehand." She knew very well that Shi's departure was unavoidable, and it was only a matter of time. Since it was like this, then why try to persuade him to stay? She smiled as well. "Thank you for the well wishes. This day was bound to not be peaceful." The news of Shi's ascension into the 5th position on the Continental Ascension rankings, and the Yin clan's elder, Yin Tianhu, failing in his assassination of she were like two explosive pieces of news that swiftly spread throughout the entire Southbridge continent and caused countless uproars. At the same time, the higher-ups of the Liang, Luo, and Gu clans converged together on that very night, and they started a secret meeting. After that, a piece of news spread out late at night. If the Yin clan didn't pay the price for this incident, then the Liang, Luo, and Gu clans would completely draw the line between them and consider them enemies. It was a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The entire Southbridge continent seemed to have fallen into a great earthquake. No one dare believe that the 4 great clans that had existed since the primeval times would actually get into a fight because of this matter. A storm was brewing in 4 Divinity City tonight. In the depths of the night, the hall of the Yin clan was brightly illuminated by the flame of lanterns while all the higher-ups of the clan were gathered here, and the gloomy roar of the patriarch Yin Dezhao that carried boundless rage resounded frequently from within. The servants and maidservants outside the hall were terrified and uneasy. They held steaming hot tea, yet didn't dare take a single step into the hall, as they were deeply afraid that the flames of rage in the hall would be vented on them. Tonight was undoubtedly extremely difficult to endure for the Yin clan. First, the elder, Yin Tianhu, had failed to assassinate Xianxia and perished in the process, causing the clan to be shocked. Then the Liang, Gu, and Luo clans wanted the Yin clan to pay the price for this matter. Otherwise, they would draw a boundary between their clans and consider the Yin clan as their enemy. All of this was like one disaster after another, and it caused a heavy blow to the Yin clan. So even if it was deep in the night, as the patriarch of the Yin clan, Yin Dezhao had no choice but to gather all the higher-ups of the clan to discuss how they should resolve this difficult position. As she listened to the clamorous noise and furious roars that came from within the hall, Yin Miao Miao's beautiful face changed indeterminately under the mystifying moonlight. In the end, she shook her head before turning around and leaving. She knew that even if she did head to the hall, she was utterly unable to be of any help. The night was still, and the moonlight mystifying. Yin Miao Miao didn't return to her abode but strolled on the pathways in the courtyard, and her lone and cold figure seemed illusory while bathed under the moonlight. She seemed to have thought of something, and it caused her proud and calm face to reveal a wisp of a blank expression. Could it be that I really misjudged him? A tall figure inadvertently floated into appearance within her mind, and then his calm and indifferent voice resounded. "You won't have any qualifications to challenge me in the future." This caused her delicate and black brows to knit together while her expression grew even more icy cold. "He's only ranked at the 5th position and it's still early. I won't give him any chance to surpass me. In the next moment, Miao Miao had turned around and left the courtyard to return to her abode. She was clearly aware that everything the Yin clan suffered tonight seemed to be the Liang, Luo, and Gu clans pressuring the Yin clan, yet it was actually Chun Shi who was the key figure in all of this. Without a doubt, she was unable to help her clan at this moment, yet she firmly believed that so long as she worked hard enough, then the day would come where she would be able to avenge the enmity from today. All of you turned against my Yin clan just because of Chun Shi. The day will come when all of you will regret it. Miao Miao sat cross-legged within her room while staring blankly at the bright and clear moonlight outside the window, and her frustrated gaze was gradually replaced with a trace of firmness. She'd decided that she would depart tomorrow and head to the Tao Emperor Academy. Only the Tao Emperor Academy was the stage for her to unleash her ambition, and the day she returned from Tao Emperor Academy was the moment she took revenge for today's enmity, the Liang clan. At this moment, Chun Shi was similarly sitting cross-legged in the world of stars, and he fell into deep contemplation as he looked at his clone that was in meditation there. He'd ascended to the 5th position on the Continental Ascension rankings today after determining his ranking before the floating wall of light, and it was only inferior to Jiang Zhulu, Gu Yueming, Yin Miao Miao, and Liang Ren, so it could be said that he'd cut a striking figure and had shocked everyone. But Chun Shi didn't care about all of this. His gaze wasn't restricted to the Southbridge continent, and it was placed onto the entire immortal dimension instead. This caused his will to be unaffected by the pleasant surprise and sense of accomplishment from obtaining such a ranking. Actually, when he saw that he was ranked at the 999th position on the Ascension Immortal rankings, Chun Shi wasn't even able to arouse a slight feeling of happiness, because this meant there were at least 900 people below the golden immortal realm that were even more formidable than him in combat. In this way, was all of this even worthy of feeling happy about? Not to mention this was merely the Ascension Immortal rankings. The immortal dimension was enormous, and there was surely no lack of some existence that possessed extraordinary combat strength yet were unknown on the rankings. After all, not everyone was interested in the Ascension Immortal rankings. The thing that caused Chun Shi's heart to feel slightly heavy was that he suddenly realized that since his name had appeared on the Ascension Immortal rankings, then besides meaning that his identity would be exposed, it would be noticed by people that were paying attention. For example, Bing Shirtian, the Wuxia clan, the enemy forces that eliminated the 9 Radiant Sword sect in the immortal dimension. In this way, it would surely cause a great deal of trouble for him. Presently, he didn't have to worry about any danger while under the protection of the Liang clan. Yet when he left the Liang clan, this peace would probably be destroyed. Based on my current situation, I can only head to the Tao Emperor Academy as soon as possible because only by arriving there that I might have no need to be worried about the threat of the Wuxia clan. After pondering deeply for a long time, Chun Shi heaved a long sigh in the end, and then he discarded all his distracting thoughts and started cultivating in meditation. As for the enmity with the Yin clan, he didn't have the time to consider it any longer. Not to mention there was no need for him to spare it thought since he had the assistance of the Liang, Luo, and Gu clans. He believed that Liang Bing would surely give him a satisfying answer. Iris Continent, Wuxia City. There was only a single power in the entire city, the Wuxia clan. Precisely speaking, the entire city was actually the home of the Wuxia clan, and besides the members of the Wuxia clan, it was prohibited for anyone else to step foot into the city. This was obvious from how the name of the city was Wuxia. This obviously showed how great the forces of the Wuxia clan were. The facts were indeed so. As one of the most ancient large clans in the immortal dimension, the Wuxia clan didn't just control Iris Continent, it was within one of the 4 great continents, the Profound Path continent. Moreover, its foundation allowed it to be ranked amongst the top powers in the continent. Practically all the existences that were able to be ranked amongst the top powers in the 4 great continents possessed world-shocking ancestors that were at the immortal king realm because this was one of the standards to determine that a power was a top power in the immortal dimension. In other words, if an immortal king realm expert hadn't been born in a power, then this power was absolutely unable to be ranked amongst the top powers of the immortal dimension. At this moment, within a grand estate at the core area of Wuxia City, Wuxia Kong sat upright beneath a towering ancient pine tree that was at the center of the courtyard. He wore loose white clothes, had dense jet-black hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, a pair of deep eyes that were profound like the stars, and dense mist enshrouded him, causing him to seem like a god. Right before him was another person that was sitting upright as well. This person was a tall and dignified middle-aged man in violet clothes, and he was the Eastern Peace Continent's immortal monarch Lin Hao. You ought to be aware what sort of price my Wuxia clan paid when Xianxia ascended to find out that he would be ascending into the Eastern Peace Continent. Unfortunately, you botched the matter. Wuxia Kong stroked a black sword on his lap that was clean and translucent like the night sky, and he said calmly, "That wasn't a big deal because he's only a bastard that shouldn't have been born into the world, and so long as he's in the immortal dimension, then he'll be unable to escape death in the end." When he spoke up to hear, he raised his head to look at immortal monarch Lin Hao before he said, "But what disappointed me was that not only did you botch the matter, you even offended Mu Junlin, causing me to have no choice but to send someone to explain everything to him." His voice was extremely calm and indifferent. Yet immortal monarch Lin Hao felt horrified from the sound of it, and he was silent like a cicada in the winter. It was truly impossible to imagine that as the ruler of the Eastern Peace Continent in name and in existence at the Saint Immortal Realm, he would actually reveal such an appearance at this moment. Only immortal monarch Lin Hao himself was clearly aware that Wuxia Kong was worthy of such a reaction. Not to mention that he was one of the 6 blazing suns in the immortal dimension. Merely his identity as a direct descendant of the Wuxia clan caused immortal monarch Lin Hao to have no choice but to put down his dignity when facing Wuxia Kong. "I never expected that a little girl from the Mu clan would actually ascend to the Eastern Peace Continent. If I knew at the beginning that she was the cousin sister of the Midnight Continent's Mu Junlin, then I surely wouldn't have acted in that way." Immortal monarch Lin Hao took a deep breath and explained in a low voice. Wuxia Kong glanced indifferently at Lin Hao before he withdrew his gaze and said, "You can leave. I won't blame you this time because of Mu Junlin. But I don't want to hear of any other excuses next time." Immortal monarch Lin Hao hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands before he lowered his head and left. "Big brother, I've finally advanced into the mysterious immortal realm. Moreover, just moments ago, I passed through the 16th level of Warrior Soul Pagoda. I'll surely be able to be ranked in the top 1,000 of the Ascension immortal rankings." Not long after immortal monarch Lin Hao left, a young woman that wore clothes made of silk gauze walked over swiftly. Her appearance was elegant and beautiful, her figure graceful and delicate, and her eyes were clear and glistening, causing her to seem gorgeous and otherworldly. Wuxia Kong grinned as his deep eyes were suffused with a wisp of tender love. The young woman was his younger sister, Wuxia Ku. She'd only been cultivating for a few tens of years yet was able to advance into the mysterious immortal realm, and it caused he who was her older brother to feel extremely proud of her. "You passed through the 16th level of the Warrior Soul Pagoda? Kur really is formidable, and you're much more outstanding than your older brother all those years ago. Come, let's go get you tested and see exactly what position you're at on the Ascension immortal rankings." Wuxia Kong smiled as he pulled his younger sister's hand, and then he turned around and left the courtyard. In next to no time, both of them arrived before the floating wall of light in Wuxia City. Wuxia Ku moved forward and poured her immortal sense into it, and then it wasn't long before she opened her eyes and cried out excitedly in a clear voice, "The 999th rank! Oh, let me see." Wuxia Kong was surprised because never had he expected that Kur would actually be able to instantly rise from over 4,000 in ranking to the top 1,000 on the Ascension immortal rankings. He poured his immortal sense into the wall and sized it up briefly. Sure enough, he saw that the word Wuxia Ku had appeared at the 999th position, and a wisp of a happy smile couldn't help but suffuse the corners of his lips. He opened his mouth with the intention of praising his younger sister, yet he was stunned on the spot before he could even speak, because he noticed that at this moment, there was a wisp of golden light flickered repeatedly on the Ascension immortal rankings, and it was rising with extreme speed. It actually instantly charged into the top 2,000 from over 8,000 in ranking, and it was still rising. Who's this? He was actually able to improve his ranking so much in an instant? Meanwhile, Wuxia Ku noticed this scene as well, and she couldn't help but speak with surprise. This is what is meant by the saying, however strong you are, there's always someone stronger. Kur, you have to remember that you must not be self-satisfied because this immortal dimension. He hadn't finished speaking when Zhuoqiu Kong was stunned on the spot, because he noticed that wisp of golden light had occupied the 999th position, and it had pushed Kur down to the 1000th position. This wasn't the main point. The main point was that this name was Chen Shi. Damn it. This fellow Chen Shi actually pushed my name down. Zhuoqiu waved her snow-white and slender arms as she spoke angrily, and she didn't notice at all that Zhuoqiu Kong's expression was covered in a wisp of gloominess. Wait, why does this name feel slightly familiar? Zhuoqiu was stunned and seemed to have realized something, causing her beautiful brows to raise while she said with surprise and bewilderment, "This Chen Shi wouldn't be that Chen Shi, right?" Zhuoqiu Kong remained silent while he stared at that name at the 999th position on the Ascension Immortal rankings with a calm and deep gaze. The description on the Ascension Immortal rankings was extremely simple, and there was only a line of words Chen Shi, 5th on the Southbridge Continent's Continental Ascension rankings, 999th on the Ascension Immortal rankings. Besides this, there wasn't any further information. But Zhuoqiu Kong seemed to have discerned too many things from this. Thus he'd fallen into deep thought and was silent for a very long time. This unusual action caused Zhuoqiu to realize that this Chen Shi was probably that fellow. In the Zhuoqiu clan, the name Chen Shi was a taboo, and it represented a bastard that shouldn't have been born into this world. Big brother? Could it really be him? Zhuoqiu couldn't refrain herself from asking. Zhuoqiu Kong awoke from his deep though while his expression recovered its indifference, and he said, "I never expected that after ascending for less than a year of time, he has actually grown to such an extent. I'm really slightly surprised." Zhuoqiu grunted. If it wasn't for half the Zhuoqiu clan's bloodline running through his veins, how could he possibly cultivate so quickly? Little Ant shouldn't have given birth to him all those years ago. Zhuoqiu Kong frowned and said, "Kur, don't mention the words little ant again." Zhuoqiu puckered her lips indifferently in reply. "Young master, news about Chen Shi has just been sent over." Right at this moment, an unsteady and wrinkled old man with white hair suddenly appeared out of thin air, and he bowed to Zhuoqiu Kong before passing over a jade slip. Zhuoqiu Kong's brows raised as he never expected such a coincidence would occur. He just noticed Chen Shi and news about Chen Shi had arrived. He stretched his hand out to receive the jade slip before he sized up its content. The content was extremely simple, and it recorded in detail everything related to Chen Shi in Four Divinity City, including his tempering in the Martial Emperor domain, how he lay dormant in the Liang clan, and of course it included the enmity between him and the Yin clan. Zhuoqiu Kong wasn't the slightest bit interested in all of this because it was only the Southbridge continent and 4 clans that were of slightly ancient heritage. If it wasn't because of Chen Shi, he wouldn't pay any attention to all of this. Yes, he was only concerned about Chen Shi's fate. Some concern came out of goodwill, and some concern was merely for the sake of an assignment that must be completed. Otherwise, this concern would transform into anger. Obviously, Zhuoqiu Kong's concern was the latter. After he finished looking through the jade slip, he finally found out that Chen Shi was indeed alive and well. Chen Shi's cultivation had advanced to the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm and had grasped more than 5 types of grand Tao laws. Moreover, Chen Shi's combat strength was extremely extraordinary. Actually, this was obvious from Chen Shi's rankings on the Ascension Immortal rankings. The only thing that Zhuoqiu Kong didn't expect was that Chen Shi had actually advanced so quickly in cultivation and improved so greatly in combat strength. What exactly is contained in that jade slip? Zhuoqiu was curious. Zhuoqiu Kong casually passed the jade slip over and said, "Just the struggles of a nobody." As soon as she finished looking through it, Zhuoqiu was slightly infuriated instead. The perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm? Doesn't this mean that his cultivation is inferior to me, yet possesses an even more formidable combat strength? Yes, she just advanced into the mysterious immortal realm and passed through the test on the 16th level of the Warrior Soul Pagoda within the clan. In the end, she'd risen in ranking to the 999th position on the Ascension Immortal rankings. Yet now, her name had been pushed down the rankings in less than a few breaths of time. Moreover, the person that did it was merely at the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm. Zhuoqiu Kong smiled before he said seriously, "He's inferior to you because you're the little princess of the Zhuoqiu clan, because you've only cultivated for a few tens of years now. There are too many reasons that show he doesn't have the qualifications to compare with you at all." Zhuoqiu puckered her lips and said, "But I'm still slightly disgruntled, and I feel very uncomfortable when I think that such a fellow actually surpassed me." Zhuoqiu Kong said indifferently, "You're uncomfortable? That's very easy to solve. We'll kill him right now." "Big brother, could it be that you intend to make a move yourself?" Zhuoqiu's eyes opened wide. "I don't have the time to pay attention to a nobody who should have died a long time ago." Zhuoqiu Kong spoke casually before he shot his gaze towards the white-haired old man that stood silently at the side. The old man immediately took a step forward. "Young master, please provide me with your instructions." Zhuoqiu Kong pondered deeply and said, "The Void Guard have tempered themselves for so many years. It's about time to test how sharp they are. Tell Lu Chun to bring along 12 Void Guards to deal with that little bastard." The Void Guards, a group of guards established for Zhuoqiu Kong. There was a total of 64 of them, and every single one of them were promising seedlings that were selected from all over the immortal dimension through layers of tests. They were true geniuses that possessed great karmic luck and extraordinary willpower. Since a young age, these guards were tempered by the Zhuoqiu clan with the best cultivation techniques, medicinal pills, and the cruelest tests, causing their combat strength to be extremely formidable. They were true machines of slaughter. The old man was stunned when he heard this. "Young master, using the Void Guard on Chun, she is wasting ability on a trivial task." Zhuoqiu Kong waved his hand and said, "Just do as I said." The old man could only receive his orders and leave when he heard this. Zhuoqiu couldn't help but ask curiously when she heard this. "Big brother, the strength of these Void Guards are roughly at the mysterious immortal realm, right? If they're placed on the Xianxia immortal rankings, then what rankings would they be able to obtain?" Zhuoqiu Kong thought for a moment and laughed lightheartedly. "The weakest is probably in the top 500 positions? Actually, you can't compare them in this manner. Since the moment the Void Guards were established, they had a single mission, slaughter. As for glory, ranking, and influence, they have no need for all of that. Then should father be notified about this matter?" Zhuoqiu couldn't help but continue. "It's only a small matter. It's fine with just me dealing with it. If he were to find out, he would instead be worried that I wouldn't have the heart to do it and spare that kid's life." Zhuoqiu Kong was obviously unwilling to say anything further. In the next moment, he changed the topic and said, "Kur, I heard you intend to register as a candidate for Dao Emperor Academy?" Zhuoqiu nodded and said, "Yes, amongst the 7 great academies of the immortal dimension, only the Dao Emperor Academy towers above the rest and is peerless in the world. I naturally intend to experience it." Zhuoqiu Kong frowned, but he nodded in the end. "Our clan's relationship with the Dao Emperor Academy isn't good, so you have to listen to the seniors of our clan once you get there, and you must not cause trouble." Zhuoqiu said with surprise, "Aren't there many elders of our clan serving as teachers in Dao Emperor Academy? How could our clan's relationship with Dao Emperor Academy be bad? You'll understand once you get there. In conclusion, listen to the seniors of our clan. Otherwise, if you cause any trouble in the Dao Emperor Academy, then even father would be unable to be of any help." Zhuoqiu Kong frowned. Obviously, mentioning the Dao Emperor Academy caused him to recall something that troubled him, so he wasn't willing to speak further about it. Zhuoqiu was surprised in her heart. In her heart, her father was an existence that commanded great authority in the entire immortal dimension, and there was practically nothing that he couldn't accomplish. However, based on what her older brother said, her father wasn't able to influence the Dao Emperor Academy. But all of this didn't dispel her intention to head to the Dao Emperor Academy, and she became curious instead. Exactly what sort of force exists in Dao Emperor Academy to the point that even my Zhuoqiu clan actually has no choice but to be afraid of it. Early in the morning on the next day, the sky had just brightened when she walked out of the private room. He'd already made all preparations, and he intended to head to Valiant Star Continent today. As if they knew Xianxia would leave today, as soon as he left the private room, Xianxia saw Liang Bing, Luo Zifeng, and Gu Yutong were already long since waiting here. Xianxia couldn't help but joke. "All of you intend to send me off?" Luo Zifeng sighed and said, "Brother Chen, you don't know how busy I was last night. For the sake of dealing with the Yin clan, He hadn't finished speaking when Liang Bing glared at him and interrupted. "Let's not talk about anything else today." Luo Zifeng instantly started smiling in embarrassment and said, "Right, Brother Chen is about to leave, so it would spoil the mood if we talk about all of this. Brother Chen, this is a start race talisman brush passed down by my clan's ancestor, and it was my father that asked me to give it to you. Please accept it." Meanwhile, Gu Yutong directly moved forward and passed a talisman brush over. This talisman brush was around 20 centimeters in length, fine like a knuckle, and completely dark silver in color. It was suffused with strands of silver radiance, and it was mysterious and light like the glow of a star. The start race talisman brush. Both Liang Bing and Luo Zifeng's eyes opened wide as they were slightly surprised. This was one of the ultimate treasures of the Gu clan, and not only was it a perfect rank dark spirit grade immortal artifact, it possessed various miraculous effects when utilized to craft talismans. In the circle of talisman formation masters of the immortal dimension, it was absolutely an extraordinary treasure. In the past, this start race talisman brush had always been in the care of the Gu clan's patriarch, Gu Zhenyu, and it was impossible for others to have a look at it. Yet now, Gu Yutong had actually taken it out and given it to Xianxia, so how could Liang Bing and Luo Zifeng not be shocked? This present was too valuable. This obviously displayed the good intentions the Gu clan intended to express to Xianxia. Xianxia was just about to refuse when he heard Luo Zifeng suddenly roar with laughter. "I never expected that it would be such a coincidence. My father similarly entrusted me with a treasure, and he said I have to give it to Brother Chen no matter what, otherwise he'll never allow me to take a step back into the clan for my entire lifetime." As he spoke, he withdrew a rectangular dark violet-colored jade box, and it was inscribed with dense and complicated talisman markings, causing it to seem mysterious and extraordinary. Xianxia was stunned. He glanced at the start race talisman brush in Gu Yutong's hand, then glanced at the dark violet-colored jade box in Luo Zifeng's hand, and he couldn't help but laugh bitterly as he turned around to look at Liang Bing before he said, "What's going on?" He hadn't finished speaking when he shut up, because at this moment, Liang Bing had similarly taken something out. No, she let out an immortal beast that seemed like a tiger or leopard in shape. It was completely silvery, had a ferocious bearing, fur that actually flickered with strands of talisman diagrams, and it emanated a frightening and arrogant imposing aura. Even when looked at from afar, it emanated an overbearing aura that assaulted the face. This was an immortal beast that Xianxia had never seen. It seemed like a lion or a tiger. Its fur was silvery and suffused with strands of strange talisman markings, and even though it stood there silently, it emanated an overbearing aura that assaulted the face. It was like an emperor of beasts that possessed peerless ferocity. A star soul beast. My God! Your Liang clan actually fostered this beast. When they saw this beast, both Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong exclaimed simultaneously with shock while their faces were covered in disbelief. With their experience and disposition, they were actually shocked because of a beast, and this obviously showed how extraordinary this Star Soul beast was. Star Soul beast. Xianxia was shocked as well when he heard this name, and he suddenly recalled that according to rumor, that the phenomenon of a tide of stars would erupt every few thousand years in the starry sky of the immortal dimension. At that time, the starry sky would rise and fall like a tide, and numerous meteors would descend. Every single meteor contained precious immortal materials that were unimaginable, precious and priceless. Most shocking of it all was that some meteors would develop some rare treasures related to the soul, and the Star Soul beast was one of them. However, it was extremely difficult to obtain a meteor because it would shatter into pieces once it fell to the ground, causing it to become completely useless instead. Only by capturing it with great strength before it fell to the ground would one be able to preserve the immortal material or treasure contained within it. It was common knowledge that a meteor was enormous and comparable to the size of a small world. If one intended to capture it, then one's strength had to at least be at the Saint Immortal realm. Moreover, it at least required 5 or more Saint Immortal realm experts working together. Now it would seem like the Liang clan had surely captured one of these meteors, and this meteor even contained a rather rare starsoul beast. It was no wonder that Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong would exclaim with shock like this and feel disbelief. This starsoul beast has just been hatched not too long ago. According to the tests of my Liang clan's elders, its bloodline innately possesses the grand Tao laws of Devour, Wind, Fire, and Star. Its natural endowment and potential aren't inferior in the slightest to the 4-symbol saint beasts and some primeval variant beasts. Moreover, he might even surpass them. Liang Bing stroked the head of this starsoul beast before she slowly explained to Chen Shi. For example, according to rumor, the talisman marking structures in the first of the 7 forbidden talismans you know of, the Dance of Stars talisman, was created from the skin and bones of the starsoul beast. The grand Tao laws of Wind, Fire, Star, and Devour. With Chen Shi's composure, he couldn't help but be moved when he heard of the innate laws possessed by this starsoul beast. The first 3 grand Tao laws were normal, but the key was that the last law, the laws of Devour, was truly too rare. Because he similarly had grasped the profundities of Devour, so he was very clearly aware that it was the ultimate inheritance of the primeval divine beast, the rock. If it wasn't for the bone of the rock that his 3rd senior brother gave to him in the past, even he would be unable to grasp the profundities of Devour. Moreover, throughout the years since he started cultivating, he'd see too many grand Tao profundities, yet he'd never seen anyone grasp the Tao insight of Devour, whereas the starsoul beast innately possessed this grand Tao laws. Thus, this obviously showed how rare it was. Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong were clearly aware that practically every single starsoul beast born in the immortal dimension possessed the talisman diagrams related to the first of the 7 forbidden talismans, the Dance of Stars talisman. But they as well had never expected that this starsoul beast Liang Bing possessed would actually possess the laws of Devour. If news of this were to be spread, then it would probably cause a might uproar in the Southbridge continent. But right after that, both of them were stunned, and then they spoke with difficulty. Liang Bing, you wouldn't be intending to give this beast to Chen Shi, right? Liang Bing said casually in a carefree manner. Why not? Hiss. Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong gasped as they felt the Liang clan really went all out because such extravagance was something that caused even them to be extremely astounded. After all, once a beast like this were to grow up, then it would absolutely become a form of formidable support, and it was invaluable. Chen Shi was stunned. Earlier, he felt that the treasures Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong intended to give him were too precious, and he originally intended to refuse. But never had he imagined that Liang Bing actually intended to give him a starsoul beast, and it was even one that possessed the laws of Devour. How could he accept this? But right when he was about to refuse, Liang Bing said frankly, "You must take this starsoul beast because no one besides you can tame it." Why? Chen Shi was bewildered. Liang Bing shrugged, and she was slightly helpless as well as she said, "The reason is the law of Devour. Once this beast matures, it'll take everything to be an enemy and swallow everything unless the law of Devour it possessed was eliminated. But in that way, it would be equivalent to losing natural talent that allowed it to be compared with divine beasts." Liang Bing paused for a moment and continued. "Thus, my Liang clan is having an extreme headache regarding it, and we don't know how to deal with his starsoul beast. So I can only hand it over to you to be tamed and raised." After speaking about so much, she finally spoke of the true reason. But Chen Shi came to an understanding instead, and he laughed bitterly as he said, "You're saying that it'll take me as one of its own?" Liang Bing chuckled and nodded seriously. "It can't be helped. Amongst all the people I know, only you've grasped the profundities of Devour, so only you might be able to tame it." At this moment, Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong came to an understanding as well, and both of them glanced at Chen Shi with horror. They seemed to have never expected that Chen Shi had actually grasped the laws of Devour. This kid really concealed his ability. Both of them were shocked in their hearts while they felt Chen Shi was even more unfathomable. The laws of devour was an energy of the laws that was sufficient to defy the heavens. It swallowed everything and transformed all energy in the world for one's own use. It was beyond formidable. According to their knowledge, only the primeval rock clan innately possessed this profundity. Yet now, not a single true rock could be found in the entire immortal dimension, so the profundities of devour were practically lost. But Xianxia actually possessed it. How could they not be shocked? Xianxia understood the meaning within their gazes, and he couldn't help but rub his nose as he said, "I only know its Tao insight, and I haven't condensed it into a law." Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong couldn't help but roll their eyes in unison when they heard this. "You've only grasped the devour Tao insight? Be content. Others can't even comprehend a trace of it even if they wanted to. Quickly give it a try. If it doesn't work, then I intend to ask my clan's ancestor to eliminate the laws of devour that it possesses. Even though its natural talent would be reduced greatly, it would be a good immortal beast in the end." Liang Bing walked forward and brought the Starsoul beast before Xianxia. Xianxia thought for a moment before he stopped hesitating. He took a deep breath, and then his body suddenly effused strands of pitch black and deep Tao insight energy that seemed like vortexes. They carried a terrifying swallowing energy that tore the nearby space to the point it droned. When looked at from afar, Xianxia seemed to have transformed into a black hole that was in the depths of the universe, and he seemed capable of devouring everything and emanated an extremely horrifying, imposing aura. This is the Devour Tao insight. Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong's eyes opened wide and were filled with curiosity. Roar! The ferocious and indifferent Starsoul beast that originally stood there quietly suddenly raised its head and uttered a roar that shook the heavens. Its clear eyes that were like blue gems stared at Xianxia while revealing a wisp of excitement, hesitation, and wonder. Its expression seemed as if it had suddenly seen someone close to it, yet it didn't dare be sure. Liang Bing was delighted in her heart. This method seems to be working. The Devour Tao insight around Xianxia's body grew exuberant, and it was like a black hole that was gradually emanating its might. This caused Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong to suddenly realize that Xianxia hadn't just grasped the profundities of devour. He'd obviously attained perfection in this Tao insight, and Xianxia only needed some time to condense it into the laws of devour. Roar! The Starsoul beast grew even more excited. In the end, it couldn't refrain from walking step by step towards Xianxia. At the same time, it emanated a strand of the energy of devour as well. It transformed into a black vortex that coiled around its body, and it was even more profound and formidable than the Tao insight Xianxia emanated. It was the true law of devour. The two energies of devour encountered each other yet didn't cause any collision. It was instead like snow that melted into water, and they merged together and supported each other as if they coexisted. At this instant, Xianxia clearly sensed that his Devour Tao insight was actually condensing and strengthening at an alarming speed, and it was on the verge of transforming into the energy of the laws. Moreover, all of this occurred in an instant. Unfortunately, this transformation stopped in the end. The reason was that the grand Tao laws he'd grasped now had already arrived at the limits of the heavenly immortal realm, and unless he advanced into the mysterious immortal realm, otherwise he would be unable to condense another law. Xianxia shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He lowered his head and saw that the Starsoul beast was shaking its head and rubbing it on his leg with an intimate expression. Xianxia couldn't help but rub the Starsoul beast's head, and this action caused the Starsoul beast to become even more meek. It didn't emanate that arrogant and overbearing aura that assaulted the face any longer. When they saw this, Liang Bing and the others grinned. They knew very well that this was a form of fortune. Even though the Starsoul beast was found by the Liang clan, yet it didn't suit the Liang clan, and it could only belong to Xianxia. Couldn't be forced. What's it called? Xianxia raised his head and asked Liang Bing. Liang Bing was stunned, and she actually revealed a wisp of shyness as if she was embarrassed to say it. In the end, she said in a low voice, I've always called it Little Starry. Little Starry? Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong's eyes opened wide while their faces flushed. They were almost unable to restrain their laughter as they'd never imagined that an icy cold and proud beauty like Liang Bing who was filled with the aura of a queen, would give the name Little Starry to an immortal beast. Don't suffocate yourselves. Liang Bing glanced coldly at the two of them, and her gaze was like an icy cold and horrifying blade. Luo Zifeng and Gu Yutong glanced at each other when they heard this, and then their expressions turned solemn as they nodded in unison. What a good and domineering name. Hypocrites. Liang Bing grunted coldly. All right, then I'll call it Starry in the future. Chun Shi nodded. He was laughing in his heart as well, but he didn't reveal it as he was afraid Liang Bing would feel embarrassed. Liang Bing's expression eased up greatly when she saw Chun. She didn't change the Star Soul Beast's name, and she said, "A piece of jade is useless if not cut and polished. A beast is not overbearing if not raised properly. Starry is yours from now on, and you have to take good care of it." As she finished speaking, a wisp of unwillingness flashed in the depths of Liang Bing's eyes. She wasn't unwilling to let the Star Soul Beast go, but she was clearly aware that Chun she was about to leave. Start Race Talisman Brush. Star Soul Beast. A dark violet jade box that was densely covered with countless profound talisman markings. These were the gifts the Liang, Gu, and Luo clans had given Chun Shi before he left Southbridge Continent, and their actions of paying such a high price obviously showed how earnest they were in winning Chun Shi over. Of course, Chun Shi was clearly aware that a very important reason was because of his other identity, a disciple of Oracle Mountain. But no matter what, Chun Shi was very pleased that he was able to form goodwill with these three clans, and he was very clearly aware that he would have no choice but to fight all alone for a period of time. But when he'd accumulated enough strength to shake the Wuxia clan, it would absolutely be impossible to topple it by relying only on his own strength. So building a force of his own and drawing in forces that were beneficial to him could be considered one of his future objectives. The Liang, Luo, and Gu clans were deeply related with Oracle Mountain, so forming deep goodwill between them was absolutely beneficial to Chun Shi. Thus, he received their gifts in the end, and then he left Southbridge Continent by himself. There were 4,900 continents in the Immortal Dimension, and every single continent was practically boundlessly vast, gorgeous, and prosperous. Moreover, they'd given birth to countless legendary figures and created countless legends. Amongst them, the Ice Sky, Valiant Star, Midnight, and Profound Path continents were at the core of the Immortal Dimension. These continents possessed immortal kings with cultivations that reigned supreme over the three dimensions and various top powers residing within them. And it could be said that sects were like trees in a forest and experts were like the clouds in the sky. These four great continents were like the most dazzling pearls. They studded the central area of the Immortal Dimension and emanated divine radiance that the myriad of living beings in the three dimensions had to look up to. There were over 100 continents between Southbridge Continent and Valiant Star Continent. It seemed to be ordinary, yet it was a distance that was absolutely impossible for most living beings in the Immortal Dimension to traverse through in their entire lifetimes. Even if it was a golden immortal that possessed the ability to teleport, it was utterly impossible to traverse over 100 continents without a few years of time. Fortunately, there were teleportation formations in the Immortal Dimension to bring Chun Shi across continents, so he didn't have to worry about being unable to arrive in Valiant Star Continent within 3 months. For Divinity City, within the teleportation formation, a tall figure walked over and paid 10,000 immortal stones before directly walking into the teleportation formation. He took a glance and saw many experts were already waiting in the surroundings. This person was naturally Chun Shi. The teleportation formation was passed down from the primeval times, and it was capable of connecting continents together. Presently, it was under the control of the Immortal Court. For example, this teleportation formation in 4 Divinity City was controlled by the Immortal Monarch's estate. The teleportation formation could only be activated 3 times in a day, and every single activation required a sum of 1,000,000 immortal stones. In other words, the teleportation formation was at most capable of teleporting 100 people at a time, and every person had to pay 10,000 immortal stones. There were only 30+ people in the teleportation formation when Chun Shi arrived, so it meant that the teleportation formation wouldn't be activated for now. Since he didn't have anything to do, Chun Shi spread open the map Liang Bing gave him and looked through it carefully. The map conspicuously marked a pathway that led to Valiant Star Continent from Southbridge Continent. According to the map, he had to take 6 teleportation formations on the way in order to arrive at Valiant Star Continent, and they were respectively situated in the 100 Spring, North Hill, Martial Illumination, Thousand Whirl, Cloudrest, and Autumn Plain continents. Moreover, Liang Bing seemed to have been rather considerate and even marked the specific location of the teleportation formations in these continents. In this way, it would save Chun Shi a lot of time. The only thing that caused Chun Shi to frown slightly was that there actually wasn't a teleportation formation in Cloudrest continent because this continent was unlike other continents. It neighbored the Autumn Plain continent, and a vast mountain range called the God Trove Mountain Range lay between them. In other words, if he wanted to arrive at Autumn Plain continent, then he had to traverse the God Trove Mountain Range from Cloudrest continent. The journey was much smoother after that because once he arrived at Autumn Plain continent, then he would be able to directly enter Valiant Star Continent with the teleportation formation there. If he didn't travel according to this path, then he would naturally be able to arrive at Valiant Star Continent as well, but he would have to move through over 1,000 continents. Moreover, there were various situations in those continents, so it would be utterly impossible for him to arrive in Valiant Star Continent within 3 months of time. Thus, the path Liang Bing plotted was the shortest and smoothest path to Valiant Star Continent. God Trove Mountain. Chun Shi stared at this name for a long time before he put the map away carefully and stopped thinking about it. Meanwhile, many figures arrived successively within the teleportation formation, and it quickly arrived at a number of 100. The nearby guard from the Immortal Monarch's estate stood up immediately when he saw this, and he formed seals with his hands as he intended to activate the teleportation formation. Right at this moment, a wave of voices sounded out from afar. Wait! Wait a minute! Chun Shi raised his eyes and saw 2 figures rushing over swiftly. One had a figure that was ramrod straight, wore black clothes, had a pair of brows that were sharp like blades, and emanated an oppressive aura. The other was a robust young man with an ordinary appearance, and there was only a flame-shaped tattoo on his left cheek, causing him to seem savage and arrogant. To Chun Shi's shock, their movement technique, speed, and even the aura they inadvertently emanated with every single move carried a cruel and murderous aura. It seemed as if they weren't immortals but machines of slaughter. Mysterious immortal realm experts? There are such figures in Southbridge Continent? Chun Shi pondered in his heart. He was able to clearly sense that both their strengths could probably be ranked in the top 10 of the Continental Xianxia rankings, and it was even to the extent that they might even be stronger. However, he'd never heard that such experts existed in 4 Divinity City. Dragons really do lay dormant in the immortal dimension. Looks like I can't be looking solely at the Ascension immortal rankings. After all, a ranking can't contain all the experts in the immortal dimension. After that, Chun Shi withdrew his gaze. It's full. Both of you can wait for the next teleportation. The guard revealed an indifferent expression. As he spoke, he directly activated the teleportation formation, and a buzzing sound resounded before a strange and vast fluctuation stretched out. In the next moment, everyone within the formation had vanished. You're courting death. The black-clothed man was only a step away from entering the teleportation formation, yet wasn't able to because of the guard. This caused his face to turn gloomy at once, while his brows that were like sharp blades knit together, and his entire body emanated oppressive and ghastly killing intent. At this instant, the black-clothed man was like a savage, ferocious beast that had revealed its true appearance, and the almost material killing intent in his surroundings shook the air to the point of droning. The guard couldn't endure it at all, and his countenance instantly turned pale from fear while his legs shivered to the point he almost fell to the ground. However, he still berated furiously. I'm a guard of the Immortal Monarch's estate. How dare you use force against me? The black-clothed young man said with a ghastly voice. You ain't. So what if I kill you? All right, Jiang Ning, nothing can be done. We can only wait for the next time the teleportation formation is activated. Meanwhile, the robust young man had arrived as well, and he sighed before pulling the black-clothed man away and leaving. Humph! Who do you think you are? Both of you can dream of living if you dare kill me. The guard puckered his lips and spat as he cursed in a low voice after their figures had vanished. Yu Zhen, you think I would make a fuss about it with a lowly guard of the Immortal Monarch's estate? The black-clothed man, Jiang Ning was still furious, and he said hatefully, I noticed earlier that our target seemed to be in that teleportation formation. Yet now that bastard spoiled it. He truly deserves death. The robust young man called Yu Zhen was stunned, and then he revealed a serious expression. Are you sure? Jiang Ning said, almost certain. Quickly, report this matter to Commander Lu Chun. Say that we were a step too late and that kid has left Southbridge Continent, and his destination is the Dao Emperor Academy in Valiant Star Continent. So we must stop and kill him before that. Yu Zhen spoke swiftly with a resolute voice while revealing a determined expression because he was very well aware that if the target really fled successfully into Dao Emperor Academy, then their assignment this time would have failed. Jiang Ning realized the severity of the situation as well. He immediately withdrew blood-red transmission jade slip that was in the shape of a water chestnut, and he recorded all the information he'd found out within it. The transmission jade slip tore through the sky towards the distance. Lu Chun sat cross-legged in silence on a rock beneath a waterfall. His back was straight while his thin figure was filled with an immovable aura. He had a handsome appearance, clear eyes, jade-white skin, and dense hair that combed in a neat manner and coiled into a bun behind his head. His entire body emanated a clean and neat feeling. He seemed to be like a handsome scholar that came from an aristocratic family in the mortal world. Yet who would have expected that he was the expert with the coldest disposition amongst Zhuoqiu Kong's void guards? In the vicinity were 9 void guards that were either standing, sitting, whispering in discussion, and entertaining themselves. They were all experts that the Zhuoqiu clan had selected through layers of selection from the entire immortal dimension's 4,900 continents. Since they could remember, they cultivated the top cultivation techniques in the immortal dimension, consumed the best medicinal pills, and experienced the most brutal tests and tempering. Actually, there weren't just 64 void guards, and there were even over 1,000. However, in the end, only 64 survived while the others were unable to endure the tests and perished, or underperformed and were reduced to ordinary vassals of the Zhuoqiu clan. This proved that these young men that possessed the qualifications to remain in the Void Guard possessed outstanding experience, extraordinary natural talent, and superb physiques. The facts proved that they were indeed extremely outstanding. They were born to kill, live to fight, and they were absolutely top-notch existences amongst their peers. On the other hand, Lu Chun was the very best amongst the Void Guard. Thus it was obvious how formidable his ability and strength was. Even now, an inadvertent gaze from those other Void Guards more or less carried a wisp of fear and reverence. Swoosh! Right at this moment, a jade slip transformed into a fiery red light as it flew over. Lu Chun, who sat cross-legged in silence, suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes actually emanated a wisp of deep and rippling violet light. It was like a violet-colored thunderstorm that surged and seemed to intend to obliterate the world. After a short moment, the violet light in Lu Chen's eyes vanished, and they returned to calm. He opened up the transmission jade slip and scanned it for a long time before a wisp of a pondering expression couldn't help but appear on his face. And then he waved his hand and said, Gao Lin, hand me the map. A thin and strong young man received his orders solemnly and passed a map over. Swoosh! Unlike other maps, as soon as this map was opened, it was like a scroll had been unfolded. The scene of numerous mountains, rivers, lakes, and cities that were in extreme detail and suffused with strands of divine radiance seemed to really exist within it. Lu Chun casually pointed towards a spot and drew a winding line on the map. If one looked carefully, it was surprisingly the path from Southbridge Continent to Valiant Star Continent. If Chunshi was here, he would surely notice that the path Lu Chun had drawn out was actually exactly similar to the map that Liang Bing had meticulously prepared for him. Senior brother Lu Chun, have you noticed the target's tracks? Gao Lin asked from the side in a low voice. Meanwhile, the other Void Guards came over as well. Yes. Lu Chun nodded and said with a calm expression. Unfortunately, junior brothers Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen were a step too late, and the target has left Southbridge Continent and is heading towards Valiant Star Continent. Valiant Star Continent? The others were stunned, and one of them said with a bewildered tone, What does the target intend to do? He wouldn't be intending to register himself for the Dao Emperor Academy's recruitment test? Another one of them frowned and faintly guessed something. Lu Chen nodded again. Indeed, the target is currently ranked at the 999th position on the Ascension Immortal rankings, and he just happens to possess the qualifications to register himself to join Dao Emperor Academy. Lu Chen paused for a moment and continued. I suspect that this period of time he spent in Southbridge Continent was all used to prepare to register himself for the Dao Emperor Academy's recruitment test. Only in this way would he be able to make the situation he's in become safer to the highest degree. At that time, even the forces of our Wuxia clan would find it difficult to eliminate him. A void guard said with surprise when he heard this. So then could he have guessed we would move out against him? Lu Chen shook his head. He's a smart person. He's able to guess that our Wuxia clan would act against him, yet he wouldn't be able to guess that it would be us who made a move against him. When he spoke up to hear, he pointed at the map in his hand and said, Look, amongst all the paths on the map, only this path through the 100 Spring, North Hill, Martial Illumination, Thousand Whirl, Cloudrest, and Autumn Plain continents is the fastest, and it's capable of allowing him to arrive at Valiant Star Continent within 3 months of time. If he chooses the other paths, then the target will miss his chance to register himself for the Dao Emperor Academy's recruitment test. Thus, we must choose a location on this path to make a move against him. Everyone shot their gazes towards the pathway that had been drawn out, and they revealed expressions of contemplation. Senior brother Lu Chen, where do you intend to make a move against him? Asked one of the void guards. Is there any need to ask? Since the target has definitely arrived at 100 Spring Continent now, then we'll head directly to Martial Illumination Continent and wait for him to fall into our trap before eliminating him in one go. Before Lu Chen could open his mouth, someone else had answered the question. This suggestion won the approval of many because as far as they were concerned, it was only a little fellow ranked at the 999th position on the Ascension Immortal rankings, and any one of them was enough to kill the little fellow with ease to the point it was easier than killing an ant. Someone frowned instead. That won't do. Since the target is already vigilant, he'll surely not stop on the way, and he'll use the teleportation formations on the way to rush to Valiant Star Continent at full force. When we lie in wait for him, he might have already left a long time ago. Ha! Junior brother Xan, you overestimate the target. One of them was indifferent and shot his gaze at Lu Chen and said, Senior brother Lu Chen, what do you think we should do? The others shot their gazes over in succession. They were clearly aware that no matter how much they discussed, it was Lu Chen who made the final decision. Ask Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen to pursue the target all along the way and constantly report the specific movements of the target, whereas we'll stand guard before Godtrove Mountain Range and wait for his arrival. Lu Chen said directly, Only in this way will we be fully certain of being able to deal with him before he arrives at Valiant Star Continent. As soon as these words were spoken, the gazes of everyone descended onto Cloudrest Continent that was marked on the map because Godtrove Mountain Range was the only path to Autumn Plain Continent from there. If the target intended to head to Valiant Star Continent, then the target had to pass through Godtrove Mountain. So Lu Chen's strategy could be said to be very safe. Isn't this action a bit too conservative? One of them couldn't refrain from saying. What if he doesn't choose this path in order to protect his life? That would be for the best because perhaps he'll be able to drag out his existence for some time, yet he'll surely miss the period of registration to enter Dao Emperor Academy. At that time, we'll have a great deal of time to kill him, and he won't have any other chance to change the situation he's in. Lu Chen stood up as he spoke, and his gaze was indifferent as he swept everyone by his side and said, Everyone, this is the first time our Void Guard has left to carry out an assignment. Since the young master entrusted this to all of us, we naturally have to accomplish perfect success in this mission. So if any one of you dares to be careless and affect the mission, then I'll personally end his life. His voice was calm, yet emanated a cruel and icy cold feeling of resolution. The hearts of everyone trembled as they solemnly accepted their orders. Begin the mission. Lu Chen put the map away, and his clothes fluttered as he transformed into a flowing ray of light that flew off into the distance. 100 Spring Continent, Cold Star City. OM. A wave of vast fluctuation arose before a tall figure appeared within the teleportation formation. He wore green clothes and possessed an extraordinary bearing. It was Xianxia. As soon as he left the teleportation formation, he sized up the surroundings before directly flying towards the distance. And he didn't have any intention to enjoy the scenery on the way. His objective was extremely simple: the Valiant Star Continent Tao Emperor Academy. His time was limited and he only had around 3 months left. So before he arrived at his destination, it was utterly impossible for him to have any thought to waste time on the scenery on the way. Adaptation City. This city is beside Cold Star City, and if I'm in time, then I'll be able to arrive at Adaptation City at dawn 2 days from now to seize a position in the first group of people that are transported via the teleportation formation. Xianxia flew as he pondered in his heart. The teleportation formation was activated 3 times a day, at dawn, noon, and dusk, and it just happened that he could enter North Hill Continent through the teleportation formation in Adaptation City. He'd flown out of Cold Star City without noticing, and he'd entered a boundlessly vast and luxuriant sea of trees. But right when he'd been flying for an entire day and night, and he was only less than half a day away from Adaptation City, a wave of clamorous argument suddenly sounded out from afar, and it disturbed Xianxia's deep contemplation. He raised his head to look and sat a man and woman arguing in the distant sky. The man was tall, handsome, and wore a gold-colored luxurious robe. The woman was pretty, graceful, and possessed a noble bearing. "Xianxia, could it be that you still don't know my thoughts? Why do you keep avoiding me?" The man pleaded bitterly. "That's enough, Wei Tian. Don't act as if I don't know your intentions. You intend to use this to be united with my Shui clan through marriage? Don't even dream about it." The woman frowned and spoke with displeasure. Xianxia couldn't help but shake his head when he saw this, and he was just about to go around them when a voice suddenly resounded by his ears. "Friend, please lend me a hand, and I'll compensate you satisfactorily in a moment." Her voice was pleasing yet revealed an irrefutable and superior tone, as if she was instructing a servant. Xianxia was stunned and hadn't reacted to what this meant when he saw the woman approach him. As she flew, she said apologetically to the man, "I'm sorry, but my fiancé has arrived." As she finished speaking, she'd arrived by Xianxia's side and said with a gentle tone, "Why have you come so late? I've been waiting for so long." Xianxia couldn't help but be slightly astounded when an unknown and beautiful woman approached him out of nowhere and called him her fiancé. But when he saw the terrifying and gloomy expression of the gold-robed young man in the distance, he instantly understood that he'd been taken to be a shield. As he looked at the beautiful smiling young woman by his side, and as he recalled what she'd said earlier, Xianxia grunted coldly in his heart while a strand of detestation arose in the bottom of his heart. This woman's dressing obviously showed that she was of rich or noble background, yet she was too self-centered and didn't care about others at all. She didn't even ask him before using him as a shield, and she thought that everything would be all right if she paid some compensation. However, she never considered that she could just walk away from this. But how could that golden-robed man possibly let him off? This sort of self-centered women really think too much of themselves. "Xianxia, when did you have a fiancé?" The young man approached with a gloomy expression, and he swept Xianxia with his gaze before he said indifferently, "Haha, the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm. Xianxia, you're very picky. So how could you possibly choose such trash?" The woman called Xianxia said indifferently, "At the very least, he's 10,000 times better than you." 10,000 times better? Haha. A passerby you pulled over casually is actually 10,000 times better than me? Wei Tian. The young man couldn't help but roar with laughter. Yet his voice was extremely icy cold as he stared at Xianxia and said, "Friend, do you really think fortune descended from the heavens? What are you still standing there for? Quickly vanish before this young master's eyes." Xianxia took a deep breath and finally decided not to make a fuss about it with them. He stared emotionlessly at the woman before directly turning around and leaving. If he were to waste time here like this, then he would surely miss the chance to enter the teleportation formation at dawn tomorrow, and he would absolutely not allow that to happen. After all, time was too precious to him now, and he could practically be described as racing against time. With these thoughts in mind, he decided not to make a fuss about it with this pair. Otherwise, with his disposition, how could he possibly let them off like this? "Stop! Did you not hear what I said earlier? However, before Xianxia could leave, Qing'er frowned and berated him while her expression was filled with fury. She was extremely displeased that Xianxia didn't fully carry out her instructions from before. Xianxia remained indifferent to Qing'er's furious shout, and he turned around with the intention of leaving. Bastard! Didn't you hear her asking you to stop? When he saw Xianxia leaving, not only was the gold-robed young man, Wei Tian, not happy, he instead seemed to share Qing'er's hatred instead. As he spoke, he even pressed down towards Xianxia's shoulder with the intention of stopping Xianxia, and he seemed to be extremely arrogant and domineering. Xianxia was finally furious. He swiftly turned around and casually raised his hand, causing his palm to be suffused with the divine radiance of the laws before it moved to greet the young man's palm. This young man was simply going too far. He's already spoken rudely and asked Xianxia to vanish, and for the sake of saving him, Xianxia had exercised forbearance and didn't intend to make a fuss about it with the young man. However, the young man intended to stop Xianxia when he wanted to leave, and the young man had even struck down with his palm at Xianxia. This sort of actions were simply even more arrogant and unreasonable than the woman called Qing'er. Bang! The palms collided and erupted with a blazing glow, and then the sound of cracking could be heard in the air. Wei Tian's right wrist emanated the sound of bones breaking while he uttered a shrill cry as his figure was blasted flying. The difference between them was clear in a single exchange. Qing'er's entire body stiffened while she almost bit her tongue when she witnessed this sight. Wei Tian was an expert at the intermediate stage of the mysterious immortal realm, and he was a disciple of Jadify City's Wei clan. Moreover, he was even ranked in the top 100 of the continental Ascension rankings of 100 Spring Continent. Yet now, he was actually blasted flying with a single slap from a young man at the perfection stage of the heavenly immortal realm. Instantly, the gaze Qing'er shot at Xianxia had changed, and she had the absurd thought that her luck seemed to be really too good today as random passerby she grabbed actually possessed such a formidable strength. You, if you have the balls. Wei Tian was blasted back with a single palm strike, and he held this broken right wrist while crying loudly with rage. However, even though he spoke in this way, he turned around and transformed into a flowing light as he fled directly instead. Obviously, he was clearly aware that it was impossible for him to be a match for Xianxia, and he probably went to get help. This fellow has good judgment at least. Xianxia couldn't help but be slightly stunned when he saw the young man leave so decisively, and then he tossed all of this to the back of his head because he'd already bashed the young man, so why think so much about it? At any rate, it was impossible that he would stay in 100 Spring Continent, so all he had to do was leave before trouble arrived. Do you know who he is? The nearby Qing'er never expected that Wei Tian would leave so decisively, but what exceeded her expectations even more was that this passerby was so ferocious and even dared to strike a blow against a disciple of the #1 power in Jadify City. Logically speaking, so long as it was someone from Jadify City, then they ought to be aware of Wei Tian's identity. Could it be that he isn't from Jadify City? Qing'er quickly recovered from her shock, and she heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Xianxia's actions had indirectly helped her drive away a fly, and it was even a fly she really hated. She smiled cheerfully. Friend, you did well. I really have to thank you today. How about it? Why don't we have a meal? It's my treat. Don't worry. I'll absolutely provide the compensation I promised you. She felt that this ought to be giving him enormous face because there was no one in Jadify City who could make her, Lu Qing'er, treat them to a meal. Yet those that wanted to treat her to a meal could be lined up from here to Jadify City. In her thoughts, Xianxia ought to agree with delight, and then follow behind her while overwhelmed by the sudden favor while ceaselessly thanking her for her invitation. Of course, she was clearly aware that since he was able to defeat Wei Tian while at the heavenly immortal realm, he was surely no an ordinary figure. But since he seemed to be traveling by himself and didn't even have a treasured carriage, servants, or lackeys, and he didn't even know about Wei Tian's identity, he was obviously an independent cultivator that came from far away. Such a young man was worthy of being roped in by her Lu Qing'er. But unexpected to Lu Qing'er, Xianxia actually glanced at her with slight detest, and didn't even give her a reply before he turned around and left as if she was a clump of air. Lu Qing'er was flabbergasted, and she only recovered when Xianxia's figure had vanished. How dare that fellow act like that? When have I, Lu Qing'er, suffered such coldness? Not to mention it was I who invited him for a meal, and I'll even compensate him. Now that she was directly disregarded, it caused her to feel even more uncomfortable than how she would have felt if she'd swallowed a fly, and her face flickered between a livid and ashen expression. This won't do. No matter what, I can't lose face like this. I don't believe that an independent cultivator from far away like you can actually dare to disregard my existence. Lu Qing'er was infuriated in her heart, and she immediately pursued him with all her strength. In next to no time, she noticed that he was heading towards Jadify City, and this caused her to laugh coldly because that was her territory. So she didn't have to worry about being unable to invite him after he entered the city. Humph! Let me see if a fellow from out of town will dare to continue disregarding my existence. Lu Qing'er grunted with complacency in her heart. However, Lu Qing'er couldn't help but frown when she was about to arrive at Jadify City because she saw Wei Tian had brought a group of people to stop that fellow, and they were in confrontation. Fortunately, this was already considered the area outside Jadify City, so she wasn't worried about being continuously annoyed by Wei Tian anymore. Even though the Wei clan was the #1 clan in Jadify City, her Lu clan wasn't inferior at all. Moreover, Wei Tian was only a direct descendant of the Wei clan, whereas she was the eldest daughter of the Lu clan's patriarch. Little bastard! Kneel down and receive your death. Wei Tian had a resentful expression as he berated endlessly with a grim voice. Obviously, his confidence had improved greatly with the experts of the Wei clan by his side to rely on. She frowned as he sized them up. There were a total of 14 people that Wei Tian had called over as backup, and every single one of them was at the mysterious immortal realm, while the most formidable was at the advanced stage of the mysterious immortal realm. But merely in terms of their aura, there wasn't a single one that could compare to Liang Tuesday. In other words, if these people were in 4 Divinity City, then the strongest amongst them could only be ranked below the top 20 of the rankings. At the same time that this caused Xianxia to heave a sigh of relief in his heart, he couldn't help but hesitate slightly because since Wei Tian was able to call so many people over in such a short amount of time, he obviously came from a great power in Jadify City. If he were to fight them head-on, Xianxia was entirely confident in being able to deal with them in a short period of time. However, he had to consider what he would do if some old fellows were to come over once he bashed up all these fellows. Do you want me to help you? Take it as me returning that favor from before. Right at this moment, Lu Qing'er's voice sounded out by Xianxia's ear, and it still carried a trace of the tone of someone superior giving charity to another. He glanced over and saw Lu Qing'er had rushed over, and she was standing in the distance with a spurious smile that carried a wisp of arrogance. She felt even deeper detest towards this woman. Return the favor? If it wasn't for her self-centered actions, how could I have fallen into such trouble? Qing'er, you've come. Meanwhile, Wei Tian noticed Lu Qing'er as well, and he cried out, that kid was disrespectful to you earlier, and I'll help you vent your anger right now. Just stand aside and watch the battle. I'll come catch up with you after I deal with this little bastard. Lu Qing'er grunted coldly yet paid no attention to Wei Tian, and she just looked at Xianxia as if she was saying, I don't believe you won't beg me to help you. She suddenly said, Qing'er, aren't I your fiancé? Could it be that you intend to stand idly by and do nothing to save me? Lu Qing'er was stunned. She'd already thought in her heart about how she should destroy this fellow's pride with words if he begged her for assistance. Yet never had she imagined that he would actually use this excuse to seek assistance from her. This caused her to be infuriated in her heart, and she couldn't help but frown and berate. I was joking with you earlier, yet you took it to be real? Of course, if you beg me obediently for assistance, then perhaps I'll help you. But you can dream about obtaining the compensation I promised you earlier. When it had come to this, she couldn't be bothered to conceal it any longer because this matter was related to her reputation, and this place was outside Jadify City, so she wasn't afraid of Wei Tian annoying her any longer. Thus, she naturally wouldn't use any shoddy excuse to make Xianxia cooperate with her and put on a show. Haha, did you hear that? Qing'er was playing with you. Idiot. Just take a look at yourself in the mirror and see exactly what sort of person you are. Are you even worthy of Qing'er? Wei Tian roared with laughter that was indescribably complacent. And then the gaze he shot at Chun, she was even more resentful instead. Chun, she suddenly felt that everything that had happened today was truly too absurd. He'd been involuntarily swept into this, and then inadvertently became both their enemies, causing him to be in trouble from both sides. It was even to the extent that if he hadn't experienced it himself, he would doubt that such an incident had occurred in the world. But this was reality. Sometimes, it was even more bizarre, absurd, and filled with various unimaginable situations than legends were. What are you standing there for? Quickly kneel down and receive your death, Wei Tian shouted explosively. Chun, she took a deep breath and raised his head to look at the sky. He estimated the time and knew that he had to quickly deal with the trouble before him, otherwise he would probably miss the time when the teleportation formation in Jadify City was activated. Swoosh! Swoosh! But right when Chun, she intended to make a move, a wave of whistling howls from the air being torn apart suddenly sounded out from extremely far away behind him, and then two figures flashed over like bolts of lightning. They were extremely swift. The layer of clouds that these two figures passed through were split open at the center, while they emanated sharp and ear-piercing rumbling that caused the expressions of all the people present here to focus. Their experts are on the way. Chun Shi's eyes narrowed as he turned around and glanced over. But when he saw those two figures, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned because he seemed to have seen them when he left for Divinity City. This was a pair of men. One had a ramrod-straight figure, wore black clothes, possessed a pair of brows that were sharp as blades, and emanated an oppressive aura. The other was a robust young man with a flame-shaped tattoo on his left cheek, and he seemed to be savage and arrogant. Shockingly, they were Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen. However, Chun Shi wasn't aware of their identities now. Chun Shi. When Chun Shi saw the two of them, they saw Chun Shi as well, and they were slightly stunned. After that, they exclaimed with surprise at the same time, and they seemed to have not expected that they would actually be able to catch up to him here. Even though they thought like this, both of them revealed a wisp of pleasant surprise that flashed before vanishing. One really does find something by chance after searching far and wide. However, their reactions caused the faces of Wei Tian, Lu Qing'er, and the others to sink while they thought in their hearts. Could it be that these two are that fellow's backup? Chun Shi himself had never expected that they would actually recognize him. But unlike everyone else, the might of his soul was enormous, and he acutely noticed that the vital energy in their body suddenly flashed with a trace of dense killing intent when they caught sight of him. Even though this trace of killing intent flashed before vanishing, it was still acutely captured by him, and he was instantly apprehensive in his heart as he knew they'd come with ill intent. But when the expressions of Wei Tian and the other's hand turned gloomy from Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen's arrival, Chun Shi had an idea and immediately smiled as he said to Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen, "Senior brothers, you've come." Senior brother? Hearing these words caused the expressions of Wei Tian, Lu Qing'er, and the others to turn grim as they were even more certain that these two people were really that kid's backup. On the other hand, Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen were stunned. Senior brothers? When did we become that kid's senior brothers? But in next to no time, they noticed that the situation wasn't good. Based on the situation before them, this kid, Chan Shi, was obviously encircled by this group of people, and he'd obviously done this to use these people to get rid of the two of them. Jiang Ning frowned and was just about to speak when Chun Shi had already shouted with righteous indignation. "Senior brother, it's these fellows that bullied me because I'm alone. You have to uphold justice for me. Bastard. Who's?" Jiang Ning opened his mouth with the intention of refuting Chun Shi's words. Yet Chun Shi had spoken before him once more. "Senior brother, that's right. They're too arrogant indeed. You?" The nearby Yu Zhen had come to an understanding, and he was about to speak with a grim voice when Chun Shi revealed an anxious expression and said, "Senior brother, let's catch up later. There's no time to lose. It'll be too late if you still don't make a move." As he spoke, his figure flashed as he suddenly howled and charged towards Wei Tian and the others. "Senior brother, quickly. It's best to end the battle as soon as possible." They're the disciples of a great power in Sci-Fi City. So once we delay, we'll be unable to escape today. Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen's expressions instantly became extremely gloomy, yet they looked on indifferently without taking any action. They didn't pay any attention to Chen Shi, and they just said loudly with a grim voice to Wei Tian and the others, everyone were absolutely, "That's enough. Both of you weren't early nor late, and you just happened to appear at this moment. Who do you intend to deceive? Do you really think we're idiots?" An expert of the Wei clan who had the most explosive temper amongst his peers held a blade in his hand as he slashed it down towards Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen. "You're courting death." Jiang Ning started laughing out of extreme rage from this sight, and he slapped out with his palm. It transformed into a divine radiance formed from surging energy of the laws, and it directly blasted this expert of the Wei clan back with a bang. He coughed blood up repeatedly while his entire body was blasted flying like a cannonball. This expert of the Wei clan has actually lost in a single strike. The nearby Yu Zhen said in his heart, "Shit. In this way, these bastards will probably feel even more certain that we're Chen Shi's senior brothers." "Senior brother, nicely done." Meanwhile, Chen Shi praised at just the right time. As he spoke, he wasn't slow in the slightest to grab with his finger, forming a force that was like layer upon layer of tempestuous waves, and it surged towards Wei Tian and the others. Everyone present was agitated, and they felt both shocked and furious when they saw this. Originally, they suspected that Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen were Chen Shi's backup, yet they merely suspected it because they weren't willing to offend people they shouldn't offend. However, at this moment, when they saw that Jiang Ning actually attacked so ruthlessly and instantly heavily injured one of their own, blood instantly rushed into their heads, and they were unable to contain their anger. So what if these two fellows aren't the senior brothers of this kid? Since they dared to attack a member of our Wei clan, then they must pay the price in blood. Instantly, all these experts of the Wei clan couldn't restrain themselves and howled furiously. "Kill! Kill these three bastards! They actually dared to come act wildly in our Sci-Fi City. They're really courting death. We absolutely can't let them off. Kill!" The battle erupted with a bang, and the scene was instantly thrown into chaos while the sound of battle could be heard everywhere. "Everyone, calm your rage. We're absolutely not the senior brothers of that kid." Yu Zhen frowned as he dodged their attacks while speaking repeatedly with a voice that was like a thunderclap that resounded through the surroundings. He was naturally not afraid of them, yet he wasn't willing to be used by Chen Shi like this because if he were to miss the opportunity to get Chen Shi because of this, then he would be unable to accept it. So as he spoke, he charged towards Chen Shi with the intention of proving that he really wasn't Chen Shi's senior brother. But when this scene entered into the eyes of Wei Tian and the others, it transformed into a scene of Yu Zhen intending to assist Chen Shi, and they were even more infuriated. "Motherfucker! You're still acting at a time like this? Damn it! How many times do all of you intend to play such childish tricks? If you two aren't that kid's senior brothers, then why would you recognize him? Despicable bastards! Tui! Kill them all! Ah! You motherfucker! You actually crippled my right arm. You attacked so ruthlessly yet you say you aren't that kid's senior brothers? Despicable. Truly despicable. Kill. Don't listen to them. It's a trap. They're intentionally deceiving us." The Wei clan's experts burned with rage and attacked madly. No matter how Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen explained, they remained completely indifferent, and Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen's explanations caused them to feel that their wisdom was being humiliated. So they became even more infuriated. At this moment, Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen were infuriated as well, and they said in a grim voice, "Good, very good. You ignorant idiots. Since you're courting death, then we'll fulfill your wish." Both of them stopped hesitating and displayed their true ability. For a time, the shrill and grim cries of battle resounded through the air while fresh blood sprayed in all directions, and the scene was extremely chaotic. Amidst this chaos, Chen Shi was intentionally moving about at the borders of the battlefield while calmly observing Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen. And he was shocked in his heart because their strengths were so formidable that it exceeded his expectations. Both of them possessed strengths that were even superior to Liang Bing, and it even caused him to feel that fighting them would be extremely troublesome. Who are these two fellows? Could it be that the Yin clan sent them to deal with me? No, besides Yin Miao Miao, there's absolutely no one in the Yin clan's younger generation that can compare to these two fellows. Then, who are they? She took a deep breath as he felt a sense of danger. This sort of feeling was very similar to his situation in Eastern Peace Continent. In both situations, he was pursued with the intention to kill and didn't know exactly which power they belonged to. Looks like my path to the Tao Emperor Academy will probably not be too peaceful. Once he realized this, she didn't dare dally here any longer. He immediately executed his strongest strike to forcefully open up a breach in the tight encirclement before executing the wings of disruption with all his might. His entire figure transformed into a wisp of flowing light that swiftly charged towards Jadify City. Big Brother Wei Tian. That kid has fled to the city. Should we pursue or not? At this moment, Wei Tian's face was already covered with blade, and it was warped and savage from the battle. He let out ghastly laughter when he heard this, and then he gritted his teeth and said, "Isn't this better? Once he enters into our territory, what difference is his actions from walking into a trap? Where can he escape to? Deal with these two damnable bastards first. Wei Tian, all of you've been tricked. They're surely not companions." Meanwhile, the nearby Lu Qinger seemed to be the calmest, and she discerned many clues from the various signs during the battle. Tricked? Damn it. All I saw was that these two bastards injured many members of our Wei clan. At this moment, Wei Tian had fallen into a frenzied state since a long time ago, so how could he care about anything else? You? Lu Qinger was angered to the point of gnashing her teeth and said fiercely in her heart, "You really are an idiot, and you're thinking of pursuing me with that little bit of intelligence?" Tui. When they saw she had fled, yet they were being kept occupied by a group of idiots. Both Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen were infuriated to the extreme. Their expressions were livid to the extreme as they fought with all their might. A short moment later, Wei Tian and the others had been utterly defeated, and not a single one of them was left standing. All of them had either passed out from their heavy injury or had their arms or legs broken, causing them to be in an extremely miserable and horrifying state. At this moment, Wei Tian and the others finally felt terrified, and the gazes they looked at Jiang Ning and Yu Zhen with had changed and revealed boundless terror. "Both of you just wait. My Wei clan's experts will be right here. Both of you won't be able to escape." Wei Tian lost in battle yet not in spirit, and he still braced himself and shouted in a loud voice. When he saw that Wei Tian still come to an understanding until now, Jiang Ning's eyes went cold as killing intent arose in his heart. Yet he was stopped with a sigh from Yu Zhen. They're only a group of idiots that were used. Pursuing the target is the important matter at hand. With the young master's command token in our possession, could anyone do anything to us even if we annihilate all of them? Jiang Ning grunted coldly and was slightly unwilling to let them go. He was naturally aware that these bastards were probably the disciples of a great power in Jadify City, and if it wasn't for this, he would have annihilated all of them a long time ago and not just heavily injured them. But we'll still cause some trouble in the end. This will only delay us in pursuing our target, said Yu Zhen with a frown. He knew very well that a mighty dragon didn't move to strike a local serpent because it wasn't a problem if they killed these people and caused the higher-ups of these people's clan to move out against them. After all, they were from the Wuxia clan, and they had entirely no reason to fear that those higher-ups of this clan would make a move against them. However, if these people were to play some tricks in secret to obstruct the two of them, then what would they do? Let's go. The important matter at hand is pursuing the target. Yu Zhen shook his head before transforming into a ray of light that charged towards the distant Jadify City. Jiang Ning glanced coldly at Wei Tian and the others when he saw this, and then he turned around and left. Their conversation wasn't carried out via voice transmission, so it was heard clearly by Wei Tian and the others. For a time, all of them couldn't help but glance at each other. Could it have really been a misunderstanding? The kid isn't their junior brother but someone they're pursuing? No matter who they are or what objective they have, since they dared to offend us, then we must not let them off. Wei Tian was first stunned, and then he gnashed his teeth and said with a livid expression, Since they dared to come run wild at our Jadify city, then they must pay the price. Otherwise, how will our Wei clan maintain its foothold in Jadify city in the future? Right? For the sake of our Wei clan's reputation, no matter who they must pay the price. Damn it! This resentment must be vented. So what if their combat strength is formidable? I don't believe the higher-ups of our clan will sit by and watch. Wei Tian and the others instantly became agitated. All of them gritted their teeth as they supported themselves up, and then they staggered as they flew towards Jadify city. If one didn't consider everything that occurred earlier, then when one saw the scene of Wei Tian and the others growing in courage as the situation developed and speaking fervently in unison, it would probably cause countless people to be extremely moved by this sight. Unfortunately, all their actions today were a mere farce, and it would only draw the pity and ridicule of countless people if word of it were to spread.